Hey everyone, my name is Caitlin Carroll, and I'm currently in the Multicultural Literature class for Jacksonville State University, and I'm going to do my book talk. The book that I've chosen for this book talk is Rosa by Nikki Giovanni, and it's illustrated by Brian Collier. This book, the illustrator actually researched and went to Montgomery before he actually drew the pictures for this book, just so he could get a realistic view for the reader. The award that it received was a Coretta Scott King Award, right there. And this could be used in my classroom for several ways. It represents both the African American culture and women, so it could apply to both of those cultures, and that could really help my students, both male and female, reach out on that culture a little bit more in all subject areas. The main character in this book is Rosa Parks, and I think that the illustrator really draws her very well, and he even talked about how he wanted to try to make her glow in most of the pictures. And it really shows the type of person that she was during that time period. And it also talks about Dr. Martin Luther King in this book and how both of them made such an impact on the African American culture. The theme of this book, in my opinion, would be perseverance, to persevere no matter what and to keep trying, because in the end, positive things will happen to you, and that is what Rosa Parks did during her lifetime, because this book talks about her struggle with inequality and how she knew that separate was not equal. And she even goes on to talk about how she was just tired, and she wasn't physically tired, she was just tired of not being treated equally. And this whole book goes through the process of that day, first day in December, when she left work early, hoping to get home and cook a nice meal for her husband and her mother, and how she was on the bus and she was in the neutral section for both African Americans and whites. And at one point in time, some white individuals got on the bus, and the bus driver asked her to move, and she said no. And that one word changed the whole course of history, and by the end, her no was turned into a yes. And this book goes through and talks about some of the Supreme Court decisions that were made as a result of her just saying no. And so she individually changed the course of our American history and history for African Americans in general. I read this book, and it was really, really hard for me to just choose one individual page that I would pick to read, because it was so great and all. But if I had to pick a page to read, it would be this page. This is after she had gotten on the bus, and the bus driver asked her to move, and of course the white men and women were not happy that she did not get up, and they thought that she should be arrested, so the police were called. And it says, as Miss Parks sat waiting for the police to come, she thought of all the brave men and women, boys and girls, who stood tall for civil rights. She recited in her mind the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision, in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that separate is inherently unequal. She sighed as she realized she was tired. Not tired from work, but tired from putting white people first. Tired of stepping off sidewalks to let white people pass. Tired of eating at separate lunch counters and learning at separate schools. She was tired of colored entrances, colored balconies, colored drinking fountains, and colored taxis. She was tired of getting somewhere first and being waited on last. Tired of separate, and definitely tired of not equal. And this is a great photo that's in this book. It actually shows some of the things that she's talking about. It shows the water fountains and the separate entrances, the white entrance and the colored entrance. And I think this book is so important to read today to our kids because, I mean, obviously I wasn't around during that time. My grandparents were, but they have no idea the struggle that the American culture went through to get where they are today. And I think that's one of the most important things that my students can take away from this. And also, I can use this in my social studies class. I actually teach reading and Alabama history, so I can use this and cross-reference it between reading and social studies, and they can also use it in language if, with writing. So this story can be used in several different subject areas, and I would use this whenever I was teaching about the Civil Rights Movement, because part of my Alabama State Standards is talking about Brown versus Board of Education and the Civil Rights Movement, and one of the main individuals that I'm supposed to discuss is Rosa Parks. So this could cover that standard for me as a history teacher, and I would be able to have my kids, learn more about her, read biographies about her, but also use this picture book as a read aloud to get them intrigued about all the things that she did. And another thing that's really surprising about this is that she was a woman, because still, even at that point in time, women were not treated equally as men. So even for all of my students, this can be a realization that times were starting to change. And with her being an African American and being a woman, she really, implemented that fact of, equality. And that's what I would want my students to take away from this book for both African American culture and the culture of women. And I think she made it known that women have just as much power as men, and that she single-handedly changed the course of history just with one word: no. And when I teach this book, I would do the cause and effect strategy with this book, because if we've learned a lot about history, I could take this book and my students could use technology to create cause and effects documents. They could use graphic organizers, and they could look at this and say, okay, well, because of this, this happened. And because of she said no, this happened. And I think that would be a great reading strategy to use, because that would give them a chance to even dig deeper and to find more causes and effects of just her saying no that one day. Because it was almost like a tailspin. Just things kept happening. And because of this right here, of her saying no and her not wanting to give up her seat. For others that might want to use this book, you could use this for a writing source in a class. For language, you could use this, and you could have students write an opinion essay on what their opinion was of her decision to say no. Did they think it was a good decision? What would they have done differently if they were put in that situation? They could write a descriptive essay on what this book was about to describe the parts of it. Another thing they could use, especially in reading, is you could do the elements of literature for this book. You could do the plot, the setting, the characters, the theme, and I could summarize this book. There are so many things that you could do with this book in several different subject areas, especially history, reading, and language arts. Those are the three main areas that this could be used. Now this is a grade level book for between, I think it's 3rd grade through 5th grade. It might even could be used in 2nd grade. This book could be used throughout those grade levels for all those teachers that would like to use it. I think it's a great source to use. I would suggest using it. And actually this year, after taking this course, I've decided that I'm going to use it in my class as well, especially when I start discussing the Civil Rights Movement, because I think that it's important for my kids to know just how important she is in our history. And so I will definitely be using this book when I start talking about the Civil Rights Movement. and she will be one of the main individuals that I discuss, besides Martin Luther King Jr., of course. But she really did pave the way for equality for African Americans, and, you know, she showed that women have rights as well. Thank you for listening to my little video. You can see my dog in the back. She's got on the chair, and sorry, I had my questions right here, so I wanted to make sure I got everything. And I hope that you pick up this book and read it, because it's a really, really great addition to the classroom. Thank you.